All right, let's talk about an absolute behemoth, the New York City public transit system. If you've ever looked at a map of the subway, you know exactly what I mean. It looks less like a transportation network and way more like a colorful bowl of spaghetti. It's vast, it's loud, and honestly, the sheer scale of it can be incredibly overwhelming. But today, we're going to take this chaotic maze and turn it into a manageable marvel for you.
Tell me you haven't felt lost down there at least once. You know the feeling, right? Standing on a crowded platform watching an express train rocket past when you desperately needed the local? Trust me, you aren't alone. Surviving this underground ecosystem requires a lot more than just a map. It requires a strategy. You need to know how it breathes, how it was built, and exactly how to hack it. Okay, let's dive into this explainer. Here's our roadmap for conquering the maze. We'll start with the urban labyrinth, look at building the beast, cover its decline and revival, and then wrap up with mastering the modern commute and the ultimate transit tech.
Part 1, the urban labyrinth. It's a marvel. And yeah, it's definitely a maze.
Now, to wrap your head around the sheer scale of this thing, imagine almost 8.9 million people moving through these subterranean tunnels in a single day. And get this, that's not even a modern statistic. That is the all-time system-wide record for daily fares set way back on December 23, 1946. Crazy, right? It just goes to show how deeply woven the subway is into the very lifeblood of New York.
Moving on to Part 2, building the beast. Let's look at the subway's origins.
So here's the thing you have to understand. There was absolutely no single master plan for this network. It's like a giant puzzle. Back in 1904, the very first underground line opened up, run by a private company called the IRT. Then in 1913, the city signed these massive dual contracts to expand it, partnering with the IRT and their fierce rival, the BRT. Eventually, the city decided it wanted a piece of the action too and opened its own competing IND system in 1932. Finally, in 1940, all three of these bitter rivals were unified into one sprawling network.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how that old rivalry actually affects your commute today. See, because the IRT built first, their tunnels were narrower, which meant shorter, narrower cars. That's today's numbered A division. Later on, the BMT and IND wanted to maximize their profits, so they built wider tunnels for much bigger cars. That's the lettered B division. And because of that fierce historical corporate rivalry, you literally cannot run a wider lettered train on a narrower numbered line today. It just won't fit. It's this quirky legacy that's still around over a century later.
Part 3, decline and revival. We're getting into the dark years.
There's a really powerful quote from Robert Caro's book, The Power Broker, that perfectly sums this up. He wrote, "When Robert Moses came to power in New York in 1934, the city's mass transportation system was probably the best in the world. When he left power in 1968, it was quite possibly the worst. So what happened? Well, mid-century urban planning became completely obsessed with the automobile. They prioritized highways and basically starved the subway system of its routine maintenance, leaving it to just decay.
And man, did it decay. By the 1970s and 80s, the system was actually famous internationally, but for all the wrong reasons. It was gritty, and it was terrifyingly unreliable. You had rampant graffiti completely covering the cars. Literally a third of the entire fleet was out of service during rush hour, and frequent derailments put the whole network right on the brink of total collapse. So how did we bounce back? $18 billion. That's billion with a B. That was the staggering price tag of a 1980s financing program that literally saved the subway. This massive revival paid for new cars, the installation of air conditioning, thank goodness, graffiti removal, and some major track renovations. It pulled New York City back from the edge and turned the system into the functional network we rely on today.
All right, Part 4, mastering the modern commute. Let's get into the ultimate guide.
If you want to navigate this beast like a pro today, you can't just wander in blindly. You need a strategy. First, master the contactless OMNY payment system. Second, you have got to know exactly which express routes are going to skip your stop during rush hour. Third, map out those strategic transfer hubs. And fourth, you really need to practice good subway etiquette. Speaking of transfer hubs, places like Times Square, Union Square, and Atlantic Terminal, these aren't just stations. They're basically dynamic, underground urban oases where a bunch of different subway lines intertwine. If you memorize the layouts of these specific hubs, you're giving yourself a massive tactical advantage. You'll be able to pivot your route seamlessly the exact second a delay hits.
So, the crucial point here is that conquering the system also means mastering its flow. Things like letting passengers exit before you board, taking off those huge, sprawling backpacks, and offering up your seat to someone who needs it. These aren't just polite suggestions, they're absolutely vital. They're the unspoken mechanics that keep millions of us moving safely through these enclosed spaces at top speed.
Which brings us to part 5, the ultimate transit tech, navigating with City Mapper.
The old way of commuting meant staring at a static map, guessing your best route, and constantly unlocking your phone to see if you missed your stop. But today, transit apps like City Mapper are a total game changer. They use live data and AI to actively reroute you around delays. You've got iOS lock screen navigation so you can track your trip at a glance, and calendar syncing that literally tells you the exact minute you need to walk out your front door. Technology completely removes all that guesswork from your morning rush.
But I want to leave you with one final hack, and it might sound a little counterintuitive. Sometimes the absolute best way to conquer the subway system is to, well, just bypass it entirely. Look beyond the underground tunnels. Take advantage of invigorating bike shares. Jump on a scenic maritime ferry, or honestly, simply walk. It's a fantastic way to experience the city from a totally fresh perspective.
So there you have it. You now understand the chaotic history, those really dark days, and the modern strategies to beat this incredible transit network. The city never sleeps, and its transit system is always moving. Armed with these historical insights and modern tech hacks, how are you going to conquer it tomorrow?